out of the pool. It's a true crime conundrum. Hello, ho, folks. I'm Reverend D. Lifeguard. Welcome to my fortress of mental illness, and welcome to True Crime Conundrum. Today's conundrum is quite the doozy, or should I say, poopy. I fucking hate myself for making that joke, but you'll soon understand why I did so. Today's episode is loosely holiday themed. I say loosely because it involves Jesus, and Christmas is supposedly a time where we celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ by exercising our God-given right to capitalism. Anyways, without further ado, and I don't really even know what that means. Today's conundrum involves the theft of a priceless family heirloom and the mystery surrounding that theft, and a pretty funny news report. The story starts in Kent County, Michigan, and if I were a competent YouTuber, I would give you some fun facts about Kent County, Michigan. But I'm betting you don't give a crap about fun facts about Kent County, Michigan. So we'll just go ahead and jump straight into the conundrum. We're going to go all the way back to the year 2008. Remember that time? If you don't, I don't know why. And if you do, you're just like me. Isn't nostalgia fun? One morning, Jean Mansel walked outside her home and noticed something missing. Her cherished concrete Jesus statue that she had been proudly displaying in her front yard for about a year, ever since her uncle gifted it to her before he passed away. Jean was pretty upset. She was a religious woman, and someone had stolen the statue right out of her front yard as she slept. More so, she was upset not because of the monetary value of the statue, but because of the sentimental value of the Jesus Day statue. She noticed footprints in the snow right in front of and behind where the Jesus statue should be. None of the reporting I found in the case mentions this being a two-person job, but that's just a conclusion I've come to on my own. Jean is pretty upset about her Jesus statue being missing, so of course she calls the cops. And instead of being helpful, the cops are like,
"Yeah, lady, we'll come out when we get the chance and investigate your little missing Jesus case, but this is Michigan, and we are the police. We have some people of color to profile and then furtherly violate their rights."
Jean, as I mentioned, was pretty upset, and I really understand that. I have my own Jesus statue collection, and I would be pretty upset if any of those went missing. In fact, why don't I let my alter ego Santanon explain about my Jesus statue collection?
Like this one I got from Goodwill for 10 cents because his hand was broken. Weird that Jesus couldn't heal himself, but he could heal the lepers and the blind and the dead. I also got this little fella from Dollar Tree. It was labeled as a Jesus action figure. They also had Mary and a Moses and a Noah, but I only got the Jesus. There's not much action you can do with these figures, but it was $1. I'd be losing money if I didn't buy it. But as you can see, those were very European, well, straight up white representations of Jesus, and we all know that if Jesus did exist, he sure as hell wasn't a white dude. And that's why I like this particular Jesus of mine, because he is no race. He's no race at all. Just a pink Jesus. And he's also a magic 8-ball. It's kind of broken, as you can see, but I still love this thing. It says shit like, "I forgive you. Hallelujah. Let me ask my dad. Resist the devil. I still love you. Sinner. Wait for a sign. For Christ's sakes." There's all kinds of funny magic 8-ball responses. I should probably figure out a way to fix this up so it works properly. So next time I need to pray, I can just ask Jesus a question. Like, for instance, Jesus is, this is gonna be a good video. I died for this? Yes, Jesus. Yes, you did. Anyways, back to Jean and her Jesus.
Thanks, Santanon. Back to Jean. What was she to do about her missing Jesus? The police, it seemed, weren't going to be of much help. But then, her phone rang. Could this be the police with great news about the salvation of Jean's Jizzy? No, it was a gravelly, distorted voice. Was it Satan? No. It was definitely a human. And that human voice was telling Jean, well, actually telling Jean's husband, who wasn't named in any of the reports that I dug through for this case. It was telling them to go outside and go to the mailbox. So, Jean and her husband go and they look in the mailbox. And what do they retrieve? A ransom note. This ransom note is so ridiculous, if I read it aloud, you would think I was making it up. So, I'm gonna let the original reporter from the 2008 news report read the ransom note instead.
The note reads, "We are holding Jesus ransom until you clean up the poopy from your wieners, and trust us, we see you take your wieners for long walks without picking up their poopy in our yards. This has upset us dearly, so please clean up all the Wiener Poopie if you want to see Jesus unharmed."
Very weird ransom note with childlike handwriting and childish phrasing. Could this be a purposeful red herring, or maybe two children are the ones who stole the statue? So, once Jean got this note, she calls the cops again. And I guess the cops came out, and I guess they actually took a report this time. What could the cops really do about all this? Nothing. You know, they have murders to not solve, and innocent people to hassle, and people of color to profile. They're busy. Jean decided, since the cops are useless, to contact the local news. And she did that. And that's why we have the footage that I've been using. So the news shows up and they interview Jean about this situation. And I'd like to go ahead and preface this with Jean comes across a little blissfully simple. In a cute old person way. I'm in no way disparaging this woman or shit talking her. Why don't I just go ahead and have my alter ego Santanon explain what exactly I'm getting at by saying that.
She calls quotation marks little lines. She doesn't pick up on the fact that the people writing the ransom note put Jesus's name in quotes because the statue isn't the real Jesus. It's a representation of Jesus.
They put these little lines next to the word Jesus. No adult's gonna waste their time doing that.
But of course, Jean misses this detail and actually takes offense to it. I mean, she says, who has time for that? Jean, it's quotations, but that's besides the point.
The thing is, though, her and I arrived at the same conclusion, even though we took completely opposite paths. And that conclusion is that children stole her statue of Jizzy Chizzy.
Don't call me Jizzy Crazy.
See, Jean's reasoning for suspecting children is the fact that they use quotation marks around the name Jesus. And to me, that's a weird conclusion to jump to by that. In my opinion, it actually shows that the author of the note has good punctuation and grammar skills. But Jean's secondary reasoning for thinking it was children was the same reasoning I had. And that reasoning is the vocabulary and the phrasing used within this ransom note.
And referring to Weiner Poopie? My gosh.
Jean did happen to have wiener dogs, 4 to be exact. But it seems the use of wiener in the ransom note was yet another thing that Jean took offense to.
My gosh.
She does go on to say that she won't press charges as long as Jesus Christ is returned unharmed.
Don't take my name in vain.
And if we're technically speaking, I mean, Jean has every right in the world to press charges. Somebody came onto her property and stole from her. And she was also right when she talked about your property, your possessions, they should be safe in your own front yard.
And I thought, my gosh, something like that's going to be safe in your yard.
But that's the problem, Jean. Your possessions aren't safe. Even in your own front yard.
My gosh.
According to all the research I did on this case, and I did an embarrassing amount of research on this conundrum. The statue was taken by Jean's granddaughter. And the granddaughter is also who wrote the note. Jean reached back out to the police after everything was said and done. And she also reached out to the news organizations and she let everybody know that it was fine.
The statue had been taken not by my neighbors, but by a family member, making it a family situation.
She did reveal she was happy the statue was back and she kept her promise and she didn't press any charges. But earlier I mentioned the possibility of this being a two-person, or in this case, a two-children job. Santanon, you care to explain my logic on this one?
In all the research I did, never actually said that was her granddaughter. The only thing I could find that said it was her granddaughter was a video on YouTube. None of the articles back that up. They just say a family member took it. This whole thing was just a prank her grandkids pulled on her. You know, apparently her grandkids were like,
"Hey, remember when Grandma got yelled at by her neighbor about her wiener dogs doing poopy in their yards? What if we stole Grandma's Jesus statue that Great Uncle left her and gave her a ransom note saying it was because of her wiener's poopy?"
You know, it's kind of a cute, innocent thing. That YouTube video I found that said it was Jean's granddaughter also said Jean had a tendency to overreact, which seems to be truthful, at least in this case. So that leads me to believe that her granddaughter was the family member involved. But I do want to point out something. Admittedly, we at least know it was taken by her family member as a prank. But let's say it was her granddaughter. If you go back to the beginning of this report, there were two sets of footprints in front of and behind the Jesus statue.
There was footprints behind it and footprints in front of it.
And we know the Jesus statue weighs at least 80 pounds. And I'm all for girl power, women's equality, anything I can do, women can do better type stuff. But a little girl alone isn't going to be able to haul that Jesus statue. Now, if it wasn't snowing, I'd be like, okay, she was smart enough to work out like a lever pulley. Maybe she put it on a skateboard and rolled it into her garage or something. And that's another thing. I don't know where they stored the statue while it was missing. I'm assuming the garage or something, or one of their houses. I'm getting off track. My point is, a little girl isn't going to be able to haul this 80-pound Jesus statue alone. And like I said at the beginning of the report, two sets of footprints. So, going back to what I said at the beginning of this, clearly a two-person job. And if we go to the very start of this news report, bam, that's the suspect for the second culprit. Inside job, another one of Jean's grandchildren. This is solved. Case closed. This was a fun one, and there was no murder, and I like that.
I like that there was no murder in this one as well, Santanon. Thanks. Update. So, I was doing some further research after I edited together this whole video, and I found out my alter ego and I were onto something when we said it was a two-person job, but it turns out it wasn't both the grandchildren. I talked to Jean's granddaughter, on Facebook. And for anonymity's sake, I'm not going to include her name. It was her granddaughter. Her granddaughter was not a little kid at the time. Her granddaughter was a teenager, 17 years old to be exact. And it was her and her best friend who took the statue. And the big kicker is it's not even a Jesus statue. It's actually a Virgin Mary statue. And I asked, just for curiosity's sake, where the statue was stored, and they kept it at Jean's granddaughter's friend's house. So I'm wishing Jean and her family the best. It was just a prank, and that prank technically could have ended in some kids getting charged with theft, but it didn't end like that at all. It ended happily. Thank goodness. Or should I say, thank Jesus. Anyways, I want to thank you for tuning in. God bless. Hail Santa. Merry Christmas. And if you don't celebrate Christmas, happy holidays. And if you don't celebrate the holidays at all, like any of them, that's cool too. Back in the pool.
True Crime Conundrum is a production of the Children's Television Workshop. Promotional consideration provided by viewers like you. Thank you.
All the way up there in Michigan. Who the fuck do you think you are? All the way up there in Michigan.
You know, Matthew McConaughey is right. That's kind of fun. Maybe he should be governor of Texas. Oh, wow.